My parents hit me in front of my daughter because I refused to pay my sister's rent. I was still bleeding when Lily looked up at me and asked, "Why do they hate us, Mom?" That's when I knew I was done being their victim. I'm Maya Reynolds, 35, single mom, full-time HR coordinator, part-time human punching bag for my family. And that Thursday afternoon, everything changed. It started with a text. Just 3 words. Pay Savannah's rent. No please. No explanation. Just a command like always. But this time, I didn't respond. I had just emptied my savings to pay for Lily's dental surgery. I had nothing left and no more patience. 2 hours later, they were at my door. Banging, not knocking. I opened it. Heart pounding. My mom barged in first, her voice sharp as ever. "Why are you ignoring us? I already told you I can't help Savannah anymore." Then my dad stepped in. Face curled into that familiar sneer. "So your daughter's teeth are more important than your sister having a roof over her head?" And that's when it broke. My mother screamed, threw her purse, then slapped me across the face. My father shoved me into the bookshelf. I hit the corner hard. My vision blurred. I felt blood trickle down my scalp. And in the middle of it all, Lily. She clutched her sketch pad and cried, "Stop. Don't hurt my mom." Then quieter. "Is it because we're not part of the family anymore?" I stood there shaking. Something cracked inside me. But something else rose. "Because you're not alone." And what I did next, they never saw coming. That night, I couldn't sleep. Lily had cried herself out beside me. Her tiny hand still resting on my arm like she was making sure I wouldn't disappear in the dark. My face throbbed. My shoulder ached. But the pain wasn't what kept me awake. It was that question. "Why do they hate us, Mom?" Hate. She said us. Not just me. She knew. She felt it too. I stared at the ceiling, listening to the low hum of the streetlight outside the window. My mind wandered back, not to the slap or the blood, but to everything that came before it. It always starts small, doesn't it? They don't throw fists at first. They throw expectations. Guilt. Control dressed up as tradition. And I took it. For years I took it. When Savannah and I were little, it was always her way or no way. If she cried, I had to give up my toy. If she failed a test, I had to be the example. If she broke a rule, somehow it became my fault. "You're the older one, Maya. Set an example." But what example? I followed every rule. And they still bent everything to protect her. Savannah sparkled. Loud. Reckless. Chaotic in a way that made people bend around her. And I? I blended. Quiet. Capable. Replaceable. When we got older, Savannah bounced from one phase to the next. Dropped out of community college in the first semester. Quit a receptionist job because she was spiritually misaligned. Moved in with a musician. Then a yoga teacher. Then back home. And each time, guess who cleaned up the mess? I helped pay off her credit card debt when she overdrew for festival tickets. I helped fix her car when she drove it into a pole trying to do an Instagram video. I helped cover her rent, more than once. Not because I had extra, but because I was told, "You're doing well. Be grateful. She just needs help finding her path." Help. Always help. Until help became obligation. And no became betrayal. I remember the time Mom looked me in the eye and said, "Savannah may not be stable, but she has a good heart. You could learn a little softness from her." Softness? Where was that softness today when they bruised me in front of my child? No. That night, lying on a mattress that suddenly didn't feel like mine anymore, I realized something. I hadn't been a daughter in years. I had been an employee. A wallet. An emotional punching bag wrapped in duty. And Lily had seen all of it. She had seen me say yes to every request. She had seen me hide tears in the bathroom after bank transfers. She had seen me come home late, still smiling. Because I didn't want her to feel my exhaustion. And now she had seen the final straw. I turned my head to look at her sleeping. Even in the dim light, I could see the faint red smudge where her face had pressed against my shirt, the blood from my own scalp. My daughter had fallen asleep next to my wounds. Something inside me clenched. I couldn't let her grow up thinking this was love. That abuse looked like help. That silence meant strength. No, not anymore. I got up from bed quietly, tiptoed to the kitchen, and pulled out an old lockbox I hadn't touched in months. Inside were papers, some marked with blue legal tabs, others folded carefully with signatures. At the very bottom, the property deed. Under Bluebonnet Holdings, LLC. Address, 478, Willow Drive. Owner, me. That was the house my parents were renting. The one they had been living in for almost 3 years, thinking it belonged to some investment company. They didn't know that investment company was me. 2 years ago, I scraped together every bonus, every freelance contract, and partnered with a former client to buy it under an LLC. The rental income barely covered the mortgage, and every spare dime still went to helping Savannah. It had come up in a foreclosure auction. They hadn't even read the lease when they signed it. And now? Now I had the power to take back everything they drained from me. But I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to fight back the way they did, with rage and force. I would do it quietly, legally. Precisely. Because real power doesn't need to shout. At 6:48 the next morning, I was in my car with Lily, both of us bundled in hoodies. The bruise above my cheekbone was turning a sickly purple. And I wore sunglasses even though the sky was still overcast. Lily didn't ask any questions. She just held my hand in the silence, sketchpad in her lap like always. We stopped at her school. I kissed her forehead and whispered, "I'll pick you up early today. We'll get ice cream." She gave me a small nod, but her eyes lingered on my face longer than usual. I could tell she didn't trust the world anymore. I got back in the car, took a deep breath, and drove straight to the courthouse. The officer at the front desk didn't flinch when I lifted my sunglasses. I handed him the intake form, already filled out. "They hit me," I said, "in front of my daughter. Because I wouldn't give them money." He didn't ask for drama. He didn't need the backstory. He just nodded and said, "You did the right thing coming here. Let us take it from here." By noon, I had the emergency protective order signed by a judge. I took photos of my injuries. Submitted Lily's drawing 2 stick figures. One on the ground with red crayon near the head as part of the documentation. Even the officer paused at that. "She drew this last night." He said nothing more, just added it to the file. Back home, I brewed weak coffee and opened my laptop. It was time. I hadn't touched the Bluebonnet Holdings dashboard since I'd signed the final papers on the house 2 years ago. Back then, I bought it under the radar because it was cheap, sentimental, and a safety net I hoped I'd never need. Now, it was the sword I was going to use to end their control. I emailed Laura Green, the property manager who handled the day-to-day. Subject line, tenant update, 478, Willow Drive. Message. "Hi Laura. Just checking, are Carol and Richard Reynolds behind on rent again?" Her reply came within 20 minutes. "Yes, Maya. They've missed 3 months. I was going to send the final notice today." I wrote back, "Don't. I'll handle it personally." Around 4 p.m. My phone buzzed. Text from Mom. "You've embarrassed this family." Then from Dad. "We'll never forget what you've done." And finally, Mom again. "Ava needs to learn who the real villain is here." They couldn't even get my daughter's name right. "It's Lily." They still couldn't even get my daughter's name right. "It's Lily." And no, she wouldn't learn fear from me. She'd learn boundaries. I didn't respond. Instead, I printed the 30-day eviction notice. I placed it in an envelope, certified, signed, tracked. Tomorrow, they'd receive it, not from the court. Not from a stranger, but from me. The person they dismissed, insulted, and battered. The person they thought would always say yes. That night, Lily sat across from me at the kitchen table with her sketchpad while I filled out the follow-up documents online. She paused and looked up. "Mom, are Grandma and Grandpa going to come back?" I met her eyes. "No, they're not allowed to anymore. And if they do, we'll call someone stronger than them." She blinked slowly, then nodded. She went back to drawing. A small yellow house with 2 stick figures and the sun smiling overhead. The next morning, I bumped into Savannah at the grocery store. She was in the beauty aisle, tossing expensive shampoo and $40 conditioner into her cart like she had just gotten a bonus. She saw me and rolled her eyes. "Still playing the victim," she said. "Still living off sympathy points?" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. "No. I'm just watching the stage crumble beneath your spotlight," I said calmly. She froze. "What does that mean?" I didn't explain. Because some people only learn when the ground gives way beneath them. The eviction notice landed at their door the next day. Laura confirmed receipt with a photo. My father's signature at the bottom of the certified slip was shaky. almost unreadable. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt clean, like wiping off decades of rot. And I knew this wasn't revenge. It was release. They taught me obedience through guilt. I would teach them consequence through silence. By the time the eviction notice hit their mailbox, the silence from my parents was unnerving. No angry texts, no missed calls, just silence. I thought maybe they were planning something, or maybe they finally realized what I had done. But then, 3 days later, a cousin I barely spoke to messaged me on Facebook. "Hey, did something happen? Your parents are calling the family saying you've lost your mind." Of course they were. Carol and Richard Reynolds were never the villains of their own stories. They were always the victims. The misunderstood parents. The poor elderly couple thrown out by their ungrateful daughter. I didn't respond to the message. I didn't owe anyone a justification. Not anymore. That weekend, Lily and I visited an open house. A small craftsman home just 2 streets over. White shutters, a tiny fenced-in yard, and the most perfect lavender bushes blooming right out front. She ran ahead, spinning in the living room. "This could be our real house, right?" she asked. I knelt beside her. "Not just real. Ours." She smiled wide, and in that moment, something shifted in her face. A kind of peace I hadn't seen in months, maybe years. Rachel never wrote again, but months later, I saw her name on a volunteer roster at the same women's center where I now teach boundary workshops. I never asked why. Maybe she had her own scars. Maybe some cycles ran in wider circles than I realized. I signed the papers that Tuesday. A modest down payment. Nothing fancy, but it was safe. And it was ours. Meanwhile, my parents were running out of time. Laura sent me a photo from the security camera on the rental property. Dated, time-stamped. Day 27. The porch was covered in plastic bags, half-packed boxes. A cracked lamp I remembered from childhood. My father stood in the yard pacing. My mother sat on the porch swing, her prized possession rusted at the base, creaking under her weight. But Savannah? Nowhere to be found. Turns out, just days after our grocery store run-in, she had flown to Miami again. One last soul trip, her Instagram said. Sunset selfies. Rooftop cocktails. And a story captioned, "I don't need anyone. I choose peace." Poetic. The girl who drained everyone around her for a decade had suddenly found independence. The second responsibility showed up at her doorstep. On day 30, I parked across the street from the house I once called home. Technically, the protective order kept them from coming near us, but not the other way around. I chose to deliver this closure myself. Lily insisted on coming too. She had her backpack, a granola bar, and her sketchpad peeking out the top. Her hand found mine as we walked slowly toward the cluttered yard. My dad looked up first. His face turned a deep shade of red, rage mixing with disbelief. Mom was next. She stood up abruptly, dragging a suitcase with a busted zipper. "Maya, you can't be serious," she spat. "You're our daughter. You're throwing us out like trash." I looked her dead in the eye. "You treated me like trash when I needed protection. When Lily cried as you hit me, and you told her to stay out of it." She opened her mouth, but I kept going. "You had 30 days. You chose not to leave. That was your decision." Dad stomped forward, finger raised. "You think you're powerful because you bought a house? You think money makes you better than your own family?" I didn't flinch. "No," I said. "But it does mean I get to choose who's allowed in my life. And who isn't." He reached for my arm. But this time I didn't freeze. "Touch me again," I said coldly, "and the police will be here faster than your next lie." His hand dropped. Lily stepped forward, voice soft but steady. "You shouldn't have hurt my mom," she said. "You said family means love. But you lied." My mother's lip trembled. But not once did she apologize. Instead she hissed, "You'll regret this. One day you'll be alone." I shook my head. "I was alone when you were in my house. Now I'm finally free." They stood there, surrounded by years of junk, broken furniture, pride in plastic bags. For a moment I just watched them. Not with anger. Not even sadness. Just closure. Back at the car, Lily climbed into her seat and held out her sketchpad. She'd drawn the porch. The swing. 2 people walking away, one big, one small. In the corner, a little yellow house and a son with a big, smiling face. That night, I lit a candle in our new kitchen. Chamomile tea for her. Green for me. She looked around at the half-empty boxes and the lavender just outside the window. Do you feel better now? She asked. I paused. I feel clean, I said. Like something heavy just washed away. The first week in our new home was quiet in a way I'd never known before. Not just sound but silence in the soul. There were no slamming doors. No guilt-tripping voicemails. No demands to do the right thing. Just mornings with birdsong through the kitchen window, and Lily humming softly as she colored before school. I was learning how to breathe again. 3 days after the move, I got a message from my cousin Rachel. She sent no greeting, just a screenshot of a group chat. Your parents are staying above an old nail salon. 1 bedroom. Savannah isn't with them. Apparently Savannah had cut off contact. Drained her shared Venmo account. Left a voicemail saying, I'm not your backup plan. Figure it out yourselves. It was poetic. The golden child finally chose herself just like they taught her. Except this time they weren't cheering her on. They were trapped. And for once no one was rushing to rescue them. I never replied to Rachel. There was nothing more to say. That night, Lily brought me a new drawing. Our new house yellow door. Soft purple blooms out front. 2 stick figures side by side. And a speech bubble above. We're safe now. I bit my lip, tears stinging. Because it wasn't just a drawing. It was her telling me, you did the right thing, Mom. At work, people noticed something had shifted in me. I wasn't flinching at every email subject line. I wasn't rushing to say yes to every request. Every overtime favor, every office birthday gift. I had started therapy. Once a week. Online at first. The therapist asked me something that stunned me more than any slap. When was the last time you felt proud of yourself without needing someone else to say it first? I didn't have an answer, but I was working on it. One afternoon, I took Lily to the library. She went straight for the art section while I wandered into the finance aisle. Not because I needed money, but because I wanted to understand how I had ended up so unprepared to say no for so long. I checked out a book called Emotional Inheritance: What Our Families Leave Behind and What We Carry. Chapter 1 hit like a punch. Sometimes we're not raised, we're recruited. Recruited into loyalty, into guilt, into roles we never chose but couldn't escape. That was me. The daughter, the provider, the fixer. Not because I was stronger, but because they made me believe I had no choice. 1 week later, I got one final email. Subject line: apartment recommendation? It was from my father. Short and stiff. He asked if I knew anyone renting a place under $700 per month and whether I could let bygones be bygones. I stared at it for a full minute. Then I clicked archive. Not delete. Not reply. Just out of sight. Out of power. Lily asked me that evening, if they say sorry, will we let them come over? I paused. Forgiveness doesn't always mean welcome, I said. Sometimes it means wishing someone well from far away. She nodded. Then added a sticker to the corner of her new bedroom mirror that said, protect your peace. Sunday morning. We painted the mailbox yellow. It matched the door. We planted new lavender. This time, Lily picked the spots. She wanted them to grow near the porch where she could see them from her window. It smells like home now, she said. I stood behind her, coffee in hand, watching her braid little flowers into the fence. And I realized, it wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about justice. It was about breaking a cycle so she'd never have to live the life I barely escaped. I started writing again. Journaling mostly. Not for anyone else. Just me. And in the last entry of the old notebook I found in the move, I wrote this. They taught me obedience through guilt. I taught myself freedom through boundaries. I hadn't seen my mother in person since the eviction day. Not at the store. Not in passing. Not even online. She had vanished, as if the silence embarrassed her more than the slap ever did. So when I walked out to check the mailbox that morning and saw her standing at the end of my driveway, I froze. She wasn't carrying anything. No bag. No boxes. No demands. Just a folded envelope in her hand and a look I hadn't seen in years. Not anger. Not entitlement. Just tired. I didn't move. I didn't wave. She didn't come any closer. She just placed the envelope on top of my mailbox, turned around, and walked back toward the sidewalk. She never looked back. I waited until she was completely out of sight before I picked it up. Inside was a photo. Old. Faded. Me age 5. Savannah age 6. We were sitting on the back porch steps eating popsicles. Our faces sticky. Laughing. Our mother's handwriting was on the back. The last summer before everything got complicated. Nothing else. No apology. No, love Mom. No explanation. Just that one sentence and that one picture. I stood there. Wind blowing faintly through the lavender bushes. Fingers trembling as I held the photo. It didn't feel like closure. Not exactly. But it felt like acknowledgement. Like maybe in her own way. She finally saw what she had broken. And even if she couldn't say sorry out loud, she was leaving a piece of memory behind, one where I was still whole. Before the weight. Before the burden. I slipped the photo inside my journal and wrote one line beneath it. She remembered me before she rewrote me. Then I closed the book. And didn't open it again for days. Later that evening, Lily noticed something had shifted. We were folding laundry when she looked up and said, "You seem different." "In a good way?" I asked, smiling. She nodded. Like, maybe we're done fighting invisible things. That hit me harder than any punch ever could. Because she was right. For years I had been swinging at ghosts' expectations, guilt, silence. But now? I was finally at peace with the fact that not all stories end with apologies. Some end with boundaries. Some with an unanswered message. Some with a photo on a mailbox and nothing more. And that's okay. That weekend we held our first girls' night in the new house. Face masks. Pizza. Old Disney movies. Lily painted my nails badly. I let her. She told me about a kid at school who said she was lucky to have a cool mom. I laughed. "Cool is a stretch," I said. She leaned her head on my shoulder. "You're cooler than anyone who leaves people behind." And for the first time, I believed her. Not just about being cool, but about being enough. Sunday afternoon. I pulled into the local grocery store. I wasn't thinking about Savannah or my parents. But as fate would have it, I saw Savannah's car parked crooked, front bumper dented. She was at the checkout, arguing with the cashier about a declined card. Old habits. New consequences. I didn't approach her. She didn't notice me. We existed in separate orbits now. And it felt right? Because sometimes growth doesn't require confrontation. It just needs distance. That night, Lily taped her newest drawing above her bed. It was a picture of a tree. But not just any tree. At the base, 2 stick figures planted something. In the middle, roots tangled with words like peace, truth, choice. And at the top, branches blooming with violet petals, reaching toward a sun full of light. "It's us," she said. "We planted something better." I tucked her in, kissed her forehead, and whispered, "You are the best thing I've ever grown." She smiled sleepily. "So are you, Mom." I went to bed that night knowing this. I didn't win. I didn't lose. I just walked away, holding my own hand. And that was more powerful than any revenge could ever be. Some stories don't end with an apology. They end with a decision. To walk away. To rebuild. To stop explaining your pain to people who only ever listen with judgment. And that's what I did. It's been 6 months since the eviction. Since the courthouse. Since the bruises healed but the boundaries stayed. Lily just turned 10. She wanted a simple birthday, cupcakes, a blanket fort, and a new set of watercolors. No clowns. No big theme. Just peace. And that's exactly what we gave her. Her friends came over, giggling and trailing glitter. They painted butterflies, trees, and flowers. One of them drew a dragon. Lily drew a house. Yellow door. Lavender in bloom. Sun smiling overhead. I watched her from the kitchen, her shoulders relaxed, her face open. No more flinching at loud voices. No more whispered, "Is it my fault?" At night, she had grown roots. And so had I. I started volunteering once a week at the local women's center. Not because I had it all figured out, but because I knew what it felt like to believe you're the only one who grew up thinking love meant sacrifice. I told them what I wish someone had told me at 20. If love always hurts, it's not love, it's leverage. I also picked up a side project. Helping other women navigate setting boundaries with family, financial, emotional, psychological. I called it Break the Cycle. It wasn't big, but it was mine. And that mattered. Because for the first time in my life, I was no longer asking permission to exist. I was just living on my own terms. One afternoon, Lily asked me, "Will we ever see them again?" I knew who she meant. I paused. Maybe, maybe not. But we don't owe anyone access to our peace. She nodded slowly, then said something I'll never forget. If they wanted to stay, they should have treated us like home. And she was right. Because home isn't a house. It's not the photos, not the furniture, not the last name. It's how safe you feel with someone when everything goes wrong. And they had never made us feel safe. Not really. Not ever. A few weeks ago, I passed by the old nail salon building. The apartment above it had its blinds drawn. A cracked flower pot on the sill. No sign of life. I didn't go up. Didn't ask around. Because some stories are better left behind the door you finally had the courage to close. And you know what? I don't hate them. I don't wish them harm. But I also don't miss them. And that's something no one tells you. It's okay not to miss people who hurt you. Lily's latest painting now hangs by our front door. 2 figures. One big, one small. Hands joined. Roots beneath their feet. Lavender blooming around them. At the top, she wrote in careful cursive, "We don't live in fear anymore." And every time I pass it, I smile. 'Cause it's not just art. It's a truth we planted together. A legacy not of silence, but of strength. And one day when I'm just a memory, I hope she'll stand tall knowing she came from peace, not pain.